Ace Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Not Alone podcast. I'm Sam Fredrickson.
And I'm Jason Moitoso.
And today we're going to be covering part 2 of our episode on Whitley Strieber's Communion.
Oh yeah, we're finally here.
It took us a while. I am ready to move forward with my life and not be so scared.
Okay.
Every day.
Every day.
Back to where we are now. Communion part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, go listen to part 1. There's a lot in there.
Take a break.
We took a lot of time recording that, like 4 hours, because it messed up halfway through, or pretty much all the way through. And there's just a lot of information there that we're going to draw on. In summary, Whitley Strieber gets abducted by ETs. He goes through hypnosis. He realizes he's been being abducted for all of his life, and he's on a path to figure out why.
And this episode 2, that's kind of more of what we're talking about. Kind of reasons why his beliefs, his reaching out to others as well.
Yeah, we've got a little bit just at the beginning here. We focused exclusively on Whitley's story last week. This week we're going to focus on other elements of it, things like his wife Anne, his daughter or his son Andrew, and some other abductees is the word.
The choir.
Yes, the Hidden Choir, which is a super dope name.
Because they sing like birds?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's just...
All that and more.
On
today's episode.
Right now. Okay. So, you want to take it away? You want me to take it away?
I'll let you take it away.
Right.
I know you like doing a lot of the storytelling.
I do like to tell stories.
And I like to say
make
silly.
Snarky comments.
Exactly.
Right.
So
that's what makes us go together so well. Like peanut butter and...
jelly?
I was going to say Dijon mustard, but...
Well, they're two very different things.
I'm sweet, and you're exceedingly bitter.
How about dark chocolate?
Okay.
All right.
Dark
chocolate.
So, yeah, again, if you haven't listened to part 1, just go listen to it. It's going to take you an hour, and then come back to this.
Sorry.
We are sorry. It's good content. It's just... It's a lot.
And to be honest, it would take longer to read it. So
yeah, that's true. We're summarizing
we're saving you time.
So the first thing we're going to focus on, like I said, is Anne Strieber. Anne, with Whitley, he did all of this stuff by himself. He would talk to Anne about different thoughts and feelings he was having, but he'd never say I was abducted and I was visited by beings that seemed to be not of this world. He would always just say what happened and not give any indication of why or what was the bigger meaning behind it. But in an effort to try to figure out exactly what happened, they actually took Anne and she underwent hypnosis as well. Now, under her hypnosis, she knew... again, that something weird was going on, something strange was going on, but she didn't know what. And her hypnosis session really highlights that, because she has just these big chunks of memory that are gone. Mm-hmm. And she'll, it starts out with her talking about some workmen who are in the house while Whitley's away, even though there were no workmen scheduled to be there. And then she, loses an hour or two.
Were they short workmen?
She doesn't recall. But, I mean, the workmen and then the little tinkerers, the mechanics or whatever, they're in blue coveralls just like workmen may be. So, but
I think it's so incredibly weird that extraterrestrials would have coveralls.
I know.
I mean, of all things, they're wearing suits underneath that.
They're a very versatile garment.
Maybe they just know.
That's true.
They're going to get dirty and they have to suit up later.
But the most compelling thing that comes from her sessions is her recalling that night of October 4th, which if you listen to the first episode, you'll remember that's the night where they had Whitley.
Bang.
Yeah, Whitley, Anne, Annie and Jacques, their friends, Whitley and Annie and Jacques, their friends, were all staying at the cabin, and in the middle of the night, Whitley wakes up and he thinks that there's, he thinks that the roof's on fire and all of this, and then everyone's awakened by a loud bang.
Right.
And what she recalls about that night is she recalls Whitley screaming and yelling, and she recalls him panicking and how she wanted to wake up. She wanted to help him, but she couldn't. There was something that was like telling her, it's fine, stay asleep, you don't need to worry about it. And she also recalls hearing a feminine voice talking to Whitley.
Ooh.
Yeah, trying to in a comforting tone. And in her head she said, oh, it must have just been Annie for some reason was in the room talking to Whitley while I was sleeping. The other strange thing is, a little later on in the hypnosis though, she talks about how all the rooms seem to be separated, like cocooned from each other. And while she began thinking that it was Anne talking to Whitley, Annie, she then realized that Annie and Jacques, their room was essentially like psychically walled off. She just had this feeling that no sound could get into their room and nothing could come out of their room.
It's and like that room was just sitting like completely separated from the world. Like that.
Exactly. And same thing with Andrew's room, and same thing with their room. She thought of them all as
their individual little worlds.
Exactly. She also, at another point, believes that she hears Andrew screaming and crying, and she also, again, wanted to get up and help him, but she states that, again, kind of like with Whitley freaking out, she was told, don't go anywhere. Like, stay here.
Right.
It's not your place. And she says she knew it was Whitley who was meant to get out of bed and to go check on him. And she describes that feeling as being like she felt like she was a child and her mother was telling her, don't do this. And just really like putting herself in a position of submission to some sort of higher being, whether it was, a human or subconscious.
Some sort of authority. Yeah.
The last words in her session are, Whitley's supposed to go. They came for Whitley. He mentions...
That's not weird.
It is weird.
Nah, dude. Totally normal.
The other thing that I really love about Anne's hypnosis is she talks about him getting up all the time. Like getting up to go check on Andrew all the time. And Whitley, as he's writing it out and typing it, he puts in parentheses, he says, I maybe get up to check on Andrew once every 3 months. Like, I don't leave the bed in the night, as far as I can tell. But Anne's talking about, like...
it being a regular thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to say every night, but, like, weekly, probably at least. And it just makes you think, like, could it be that he's... Because in the last
being
episode...
abducted at that time instead?
Being abducted that frequently. Like, in the last episode, we covered, like, 3 or 4 different periods over his life where he realized he had an encounter with the extraterrestrials.
Right, it seemed pretty regular.
Yeah, well, it seemed... well, in the last episode, it seemed like it was spread out over, all of his life. He only had a few occurrences. But now we're hearing, like, every week he's gone.
It feels weird that it took until these experiences for him to actually talk about it.
Yeah, well, there was something different, something... I don't know if it was...
finally revealed.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that it was the correct time for him to know, or if he did something different, they did something different. But the last thing we're going to say about Anne, Whitley recalls in the book that earlier that year, he was working on the book, and he was going to call it Body Terrors instead of Communion, because that's just the feeling he had, was just complete terror emanating throughout his body. And it's late at night, he's working on the book. Suddenly he hears Anne speak to him, and she says, like, the book shouldn't scare people. The title should be Communion, because that's what it's about. And he looked over at her and was about to say, like, well, you're wrong, and here's why, and we're going to call it Body Terrors. And he realized she was completely and totally asleep, like 100%. And then he realized that the voice he heard was not Anne's voice. It was a deeper voice. just like with the feminine voice being a deep,
The Slim Gray, yeah.
yeah, being a deep basso profundo voice. And he says, like, that voice was very familiar to him at that point, and that's why they named it Communion. That's why they didn't go with Body Terrors or anything else.
I don't know. I find it weird that an alien wants it being called Communion when they also stick things in you.
What?
Is that not weird?
What do you mean?
He got stabbed by a needle into the brain.
Yeah, but what
Something
does that
else
have to
somewhere
do
else.
Because you're thinking of communion as more spiritual.
No,
and
I
they're
think
more
of Communion
physical?
as more of intellectual instead of experimental. I
Okay.
guess.
Okay, so it seems like too dirty to be communion. It
Yeah,
seems
yeah,
like too
it's-
cheap and too physical and
Right.
too
Exactly.
Okay.
Like that's how I feel about it. I mean, come on.
Well,
Aliens been around for as long as some people think they have.
right.
What's different with humans?
Right. But you've got to realize that the operations are only one part of the full like experience that he's having. He's having those visions that are being shown to him about the world and about his father and about this and that. And
Right,
he's
which
having extended conversations.
To me, just all
with them as
seem
well.
like more emotional experimenting to trigger certain responses. That's
so
what
it's too clinical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like there's an agenda besides for just having talk of knowledge. You know, it's
Right.
there's more of an agenda than what just having an intellectual conversation with another being.
I guess that's fair. In any case, they wanted it named Communion, and that's what
fair
it is.
enough. I mean, fair enough.
So, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's all
appease
like,
the supreme overlords.
maybe it's all like a psychological thing. It's like the book shouldn't scare people, even though it's scary material. It really is, and they're trying to get us to be more willing to submit.
Most of like everything that's been brought up in the book so far is what I think of when I think Hollywood or like pop culture aliens.
Right. Fearful,
Abductions,
terrifying,
weird
yeah.
experiments, paralysis,
But one thing that you don't get from
hive mind mentalities, like that's
Yeah.
all classic Hollywood aliens.
Right, but one thing that you don't get from just listening to the podcast, and the reason that you should go out, everyone should go out and buy the book, is because you don't really get to see Whitley's feelings. And we're going to go into them a little bit here, but like at one point when he's talking about the feminine gray, even though she's this like bug-looking, completely out of the ordinary, terrifying thing, he talks about like loving her in a way, and like trusting her and knowing her, and that's why it comes across more as
Pheromones,
communion.
man.
Yeah, no, it totally could be pheromones. It could all be a trick. And honestly, with the Greys, with what we know about the Greys, which if you don't
They're
know
sneaky.
about the Greys, listen to our Patreon bonus episode. That's pretty much what it was about this week.
Oh, goody. There's
are.
a reason why Sam doesn't let me in on those conversations.
Yes. You're free to come in on those conversations. You just can't.
Talk?
No, you can talk. I just don't want you being like, this is stupid. Because it's not stupid. But like the Greys are sneaky. That's their defining trait, is they do not have the good of humanity in mind in classic abduction, classic UFO lore.
Right.
So next we're going to talk about Andrew. He had his own really strange experiences. So he talked mainly in like the pretense of dreams. He was not hypnotized, because that would be super unethical to hypnotize a child, especially if you're trying to bring out memories that will
Abductions.
traumatize them for life at a young age. So instead, Whitley talks about his dreams with him. He says, you were telling me about like a dream the other day, and you have this dream and stuff. And there are two dreams in particular that he mentions. The first is about, he calls them a group of little doctors that came into his room, and
which is hilariously terrifying.
it's
You know,
so
of
cute.
course, in my
And
mind,
it's so
I see all
terrible.
these little Greys running around in lab coats in little, like,
the little,
weird, shiny
whatever
thing
that
on
is.
their head. Yeah, that's exactly what I
Yeah,
imagined
it is.
them in.
Well, and it's exactly the image you would expect from a kid, like
Right,
little
right.
doctors. And it is. It's like kind of cute at first, and then you just keep hearing him talk, and you're like, oh God.
Right.
And
Which, I mean, also, once we dive in a little bit further, it still makes me think that this is absolutely more clinical, more scientific than, again, a discussion of
a greater
intellectual
truth.
ideas.
Yeah. The little doctors come in, they take him from his bed, and they do some sort of operation on him on the porch of the cabin. And they were taking pictures of him and x-rays. He does not understand, or he doesn't remember what the operation was, which is also very, very strange, as we'll see going forward here. I'll reference it again in a moment, but basically you'll remember as well that Whitley found himself in an operating theater and did not know what happened there, if anything happened there.
Right. Well, he did feel like he was, like the needle was injected, though, correct?
But that wasn't in the operating theater. That was right before. Yeah.
That's right.
The needle
No. That was like
into his head.
The chamber right before.
Yeah. So it's very strange that neither
Thank
Whitley...
you for the clarification.
Yeah, no, totally. Whitley nor Andrew can remember what's happening on these operating room tables. But he described the doctors as very short, with big heads. They wore round glasses. And he also talked about them having fake smiles. He said like one of them always had a fake smile on unless he was asleep, and then his mouth was just a black hole. And it was like, okay. The first race that Whitley sees are the robots, and they have the circle for a mouth.
He never mentioned them like looking metallic, though, right?
No, he doesn't.
They
he
just
has
felt
the
robotic.
Yeah, he has the feeling of them being robots. So they're the ones with the round black eyes. So like they were round dark glasses with the round face hole for a mouth. So it's pretty close to what Andrew was saying.
Yeah.
As far as the doctors. The other dream that he remembers is one where he and his mother are in a cornfield and he's chowing down on some corn, and then suddenly a monster like appears above them, and the monster shines down orange and green lights, which when there were those UFO sightings earlier that year, the lights associated with them were orange and green. They would see these saucers with orange and green lights on them. And of course Andrew had no idea about that. But the strange thing about that is that Whitley, even before he knew about that dream, had his own dream where his wife and son went missing, and his son was eventually brought home by rescue workers. He held his son and he felt like cold, but he knew he wasn't dead. He just felt weird and wrong. And then suddenly he's transported in the dream into a cornfield. And he realizes that this is where his wife and son were found by the rescue workers in the dream. So it's entirely possible that could be, I mean, it's out there, but it's possible that because of the similarities, that could be a real occurrence that's been shielded by some other screen memory, where Anne and Andrew were out doing whatever, got abducted and got left in the cornfield and brought home by rescue workers. That's a little bit more out there because you'd have some sort of a record, like there'd be a public record. And as far as we can tell,
or a
there's
news
not.
story or something. Yeah.
But it is still strange either way. Now, the last stuff that Andrew talks about aren't dreams. It's just unsettling and disturbing. And the same day, he does all of this interviewing with Andrew in one day. And that night, he's putting Andrew to bed. And his son tells him, he says, "Dad, when I try to go to sleep, my body gets all tingly and my hair stands up, and then a voice starts talking to me." And Whitley's like, what? And he says, the voice asks me, how was my day? And it asks me, how am I feeling? Like, how am I doing physically? And then it talks to me about secret things that I'm not allowed to talk to you about. And Whitley doesn't even press it. If I was a dad, I would go crazy. I would start fighting.
What are you
talking
talking about?
But he just says, okay. And Andrew doesn't think there's anything wrong. He just thinks that this is a normal thing that happens to everybody. And then he describes...
It's like having an imaginary friend. It's completely normal.
Precisely. Yeah, precisely. But then he describes, as Whitley's there, he describes how sometimes he'll be laying in bed and he'll see a skeleton staring at him in the face. And Whitley says, "A skeleton? What are you talking about?" And then he says, No. It's not a skeleton. It's not a skeleton. It's one of the tall ones who stands behind the doctors when they take me for my operations. And they always tell me that they're not going to hurt me. And they're tall, and they have really big slanted eyes. And they're there to try to calm me down and to make me feel better. And he calls them the thin ones. And basically what he describes is the exact same being as the typical gray.
Yeah, as Whitley.
Yeah. Oh gosh. It makes me sad. And later on, Andrew decides that he likes haikus, and so Whitley buys him
Which I thought was the
it's
weirdest
amazing.
thing.
It's amazing. This kid loves Japanese haiku at like age 10, age 9, whatever. He's fantastic. I hope my son is like that,
I still
but
don't
without
really
the alien
truly
abduction.
understand haikus.
Me
They're
neither, man.
kind of annoying.
I know. Me neither. But Whitley buys him this book of haiku, and one day he and Andrew are reading to each other, and Andrew says something to the effect of, "We love haikus because they're so beautiful. They're such beautiful words. But Dad, the thin ones, they are haiku. The inside, they are haiku." Which is just, I don't even know what that means.
That's so weird. That yeah,
in
like,
and of itself is a haiku.
is it a good haiku?
I don't know. It's that same sort of thing where, like I said, Whitley would talk about seeing this being, terrifying being, and feeling like affection for it. And it's the same thing. Andrew's talking about how beautiful they are and how beautiful haikus are, and then he transitions into talking about the grays and saying that they are beautiful like haiku, even though they're repulsive and terrifying. But there's something about it, whether it's pheromones or brainwashing, mental projections, or what.
Yep.
But there's something.
Anyway, so Andrew thought of them as like haikus, and now we're going to talk about the hidden choir.
The hidden choir, which is what Whitley describes as, that's how he describes other abductees. So one of Whitley's biggest supporters was Bud Hopkins, who wrote books on UFOs. He spent a lot of time...
Which is also a very poetic name, just throwing it out there.
It's amazing. Bud Hopkins.
No, I meant hidden choir.
Oh. I think Bud Hopkins is a great name. So yes, Bud Hopkins spent a lot of time working with abductees, victims of the quote-unquote visitor phenomena, and he did this in an effort to better understand like what was happening. Whitley joined in on this, and he agreed, okay, I'm going to meet with this group of other abductees arranged by Bud, and Whitley refers to them as the hidden choir. And primarily the reason that they're quote-unquote hidden is because everybody in the meeting was a completely normal person. Like, you didn't have the whack job, you didn't have the crazy conspiracy
but, I mean, we did have a fairly decent spectrum as far as professions go and education levels.
Yeah, it was like a cross-section of society, because there were 11 of them. They had a business executive, a cosmetologist, some sort of a scientist, it doesn't say what kind, a hairdresser, a museum curator, a musician, a dancer. There's one other, like a manicurist, I think.
Yeah, but all in all,
everybody.
Head on their shoulders.
Yeah. Normal working people.
Yeah.
Now, they all shared, during this meeting, he realized they all shared very similar base experiences. They all remember seeing different beings, different types of beings, but the types were all pretty much the same. They all saw the mechanics, the robots, the shorts, and the talls. They remember the specifics of the appearances. They remember that the way that they spoke was pretty consistent as well. Sometimes with some of them, some of the different races, it was high and squeaky, like when Whitley saw the quote-unquote demon outside of his car. Remember that from last episode?
Oh, yeah, that was weird.
Time? Yeah. The other ones, the tall grays, pretty much spoke with the deep basso profundo voice of the female. They all recorded
Wasn't there one lady that said hers was male?
Yes, yeah. We'll get there, but even the males spoke with that same voice.
Right.
They all reported telepathic experiences, either words entering their heads or sometimes just like an emotion. They'd be sitting there and suddenly they'd be flooded by an emotion like anger or calm or peace or joy or whatever.
Did they also see some of the, I guess,
the images?
The images
Yes.
that Whitley did?
Yeah, they
Were
all
they
saw
very, very similar to?
very
okay.
similar, yeah. And then the last thing right here, we kind of mentioned it earlier. We're going to get into the specifics of the hidden choir. But the other thing to note, a lot of them did recall an operating theater as well, but none of them recalled what happened.
What
there.
occurred inside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like Whitley, just like Andrew. Now, during the actual meeting of the choir, a lot more information comes out. It kicks off with a woman that goes by the name of Joan. All of the names are pseudonyms except for Whitley and Bud. She talks about how she was shown like a city that they're building on another world. And she talks about how the whole world is ending and how we're killing it and how this other place is going to be our next home. Very similar, Whitley saw the first half of that. He saw the world being destroyed, and he was told by the voice, this is your home. You know why this is happening, as he saw the world just blowing up, being evaporated.
I just realized that from the group, most of them have some sort of creative background, which Whitley's falls in.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
The only two that kind of don't are the business execs and the scientist.
Well,
which, I mean, you can still need creativity
Yeah.
for those roles as well.
but, I mean, I guess a cosmetologist and a hairdresser would be a creative role. The museum curator.
Yeah.
He's not.
A musician, dancer.
Yeah.
Well, museum curator, he has to know something about art. Like, there's a creative
different kind of
background,
museum.
possibly. That's true.
Could be a historical museum.
Okay, that aligns better with, again, the scientist or the business exec. Never mind. That was just my idea.
No, but
You
you're
know,
still
just-
right.
Yeah,
You are.
just
You're
thrown
still
out
right.
there.
Dancer,
Most of them-
musician, writer. I would say that cosmetologist and hairdresser obviously fall in the creatives. I mean, that's what they're doing. Yeah, they are. But that's,
Or have
again,
some other, like, museum curator could at least have appreciation towards those.
right. But again, that's what's so interesting about the group is it's a great cross section because you have those people, and then you have a business executive, you have a scientist, and these supposedly like well-grounded people with their feet on the ground and
Right,
moving
and Whitley
forward.
also helps kind of round that out, being an author.
Yeah, totally. But another woman, one named Mary, she talks about her protector. And as far as the group can tell, pretty much everybody has one of these protectors, just like Whitley had the female.
Mm-hmm.
Mary says that hers was male, and sometimes the majority of them seem to be the opposing sex, but
Right.
not always. They all, again, remember the same voice and the same appearance. Because remember, the Greys, there's no real defining physical gender.
No.
Yeah, it's just the feeling. This feels male, this feels female. Now, another strange thing is as they're sitting down for the meeting, Whitley actually recognizes Mary, although they've never met before. And another member named Pat talks about how she went to a abductee meeting in Massachusetts, and she, as soon as she got there, she and two other abductees immediately recognized each other, and they just came together, and she described them as like huddling around together. They felt a need to
connection,
be
a
with each other.
magnetism
Yeah,
almost.
just like Whitley, they all have screen memories. Most of them recall their first time being abducted when they were between the ages of like 2 and 7. And again, Whitley's very
Falls
first,
within Whitley's
his very, very first memory of something strange is
5, right?
He was 2.
How do you remember 2?
Well, that's the thing. You can't be sure. Like, it could be something he just made up or something he did see.
I mean, my earliest
on TV.
memory was when I was 4 and I lied about my age.
My earliest memory, I think I was 4 as well. And I was walking. This is sad. This really sets the scene for my entire life. I was walking to the mailbox with my mom, and we were holding hands. And I remember thinking one day, my mom's going to die. and I got really, 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 really sad.
That is super sad.
That's like
Sam.
my earliest memory.
Wow. So mine was, my neighbor asked me how old I was, and I held up my hand with all 5 fingers and said, "This many."
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah, I felt like a badass.
You were.
I was like, yeah, I'm this many.
That's fantastic.
What's up?
I don't know how many this is, but that's what I am. That's funny. Now, they get back to the hive mind concept as well. And they all describe seeing the beings move in unity, like even in lockstep sometimes. They talk about the way they move as being automatic. And some of the group talks about, and this is where it gets really too heavy for me.
Creepy.
Well, not even creepy, just heavy. They talk about feeling a higher power, a non-physical entity that's directing the movement. Because up until now, I was on board with the hive mind idea. Whitley talks about it throughout the whole book, about them being a hive mind. And I was on board with it. And I was like, okay, so they're the hive mind. The queen is the gray. But they talk about there being a higher entity that's directing the movement. And others mention the protector type entities, which the grays, they're the only ones who really seem to speak very often. Mm-hmm. They talk about the chattering of some of the lower orders, but they never actually hear like words.
Right.
It's only the grays who actually speak, and they claim that this higher power is speaking through them. And that their bodies were just bodies. You know, they were just a vehicle.
Puppets.
Yeah, for this power to accomplish its goals. And from what they can all say, what they're putting together, even though they've gone through all of this, they all pretty much agree that the beings are benevolent. And they all pretty much have this idea that they're creating another world for us and them to live together once this one goes away, passes on. But the really interesting thing to me is that, and this gets back to your test tube babies, one of the members in the group says that they don't even feel like the bodies they saw had any genetic variation, that they were all just clones
Duplicates,
of
yeah.
each other. Yeah. And that's what's just too, it's just too heavy for me to be all these different bodies. Like, what is going on? Is it a guy somewhere else, like using some sort of a transmitter that he beams into the brains, or is it
behind a curtain?
He could be behind a curtain, or is it this essence and this force that just pervades in the universe, and it decides to insert itself into these beings? Like, how does it work? That I've been up at night
through I don't
thinking
know,
about
it's definitely interesting. Do they actually think that the Slender Greys were actually speaking to them, or did they receive that message through feeling?
A lot of it was telepathic.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the words were telepathic as well.
Okay.
The feelings and the words, both.
Was all of it in English?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
So
all.
we didn't have any like bilingual abductees.
No, not from this
Okay.
that we can tell. But the last thing that the group really talks about, and one of the members, I think it's Mary, but she's talking about how she goes to the park with her kids,
Mm-hmm.
and how she has this compulsion, this need to grab like this specific rock or this thing of dirt or these sticks, and to take them home and put them in her room and like arrange them in a certain way. And one day, after doing this for like a year or two, she came home and it was all gone. It was all just missing. And another one says that she...
It also just seems so weird. Like, if you have the kind of technology that we're talking about, why can't you just do it yourself?
Right. Who knows, man? Like, who knows?
Okay.
That's the problem. It's on a different level. Like...
Which, alright, just makes me feel like they're screwing with us, if anything.
No, dude, totally. I understand. I think I lean a lot more to your side of things, where I see this all as machinations. I see this all as tests and all of that. But
wait, Sam,
Huh?
are you saying I'm right?
I'm saying that you have a valid idea. I've said that before. I'll say it again. I'm not saying you're 100% right. But we'll get into theories in a minute. We're almost there.
Absolutely.
Anyway, one day they're all missing. Others in the group talk about how they would do similar things, but they knew why they were doing it. They were doing it because they wanted to show their children one day what their home planet was like, what their home was like.
So they're expecting this to occur in our
Soon.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And I saw something about
Here's the problem. They
2000.
put a date on it.
Yep, that's
You
always
never,
the worst.
ever put a date
Y2K,
on
bro.
it. Mhm. And they did. They said around the year 2000, the world's going to be a completely different place than it was in 1985.
I wish it was.
Well, it's not wrong. I mean, with the rise of technology and all of that, but it's not unrecognizable. I mean, the streets are still here. The systems of commerce
we're
are
not
still
living in
here.
a Mad Max world.
Yeah.
Not yet, darn it.
No, not darn it. Thankfully, no one wants to live in a Mad Max world.
Dude, those cars are so cool.
You want to live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland to drive a car, but they do have a guitar that shoots fire. So, okay, that's fair.
Exactly, man.
That's fair. And then, yeah, the meeting just ends. They just talk for a few more pages about, like, this is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. It's all dope.
More and more testimony.
Yeah, it's all dope. I'm not going to go into it. Buy the book. Seriously, buy the book. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. It really is. And now, theories.
Oh, good.
I have
the fun part.
I have theories written down here. I'm not really going to talk about them. They're Whitley's theories. And
Okay.
we know Whitley's theories pretty well.
Which Whitley believes they're essentially just groovy.
Well, he believes that they're a force that acts opposite to us to create a third force, something he refers to as the triad, and he gets super philosophical.
I don't want to be no alien hybrid.
Well, it's not an alien hybrid, though. That's the thing. He gets super philosophical and
A
talks
civilization.
about, like, the yin and the yang. He talks about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He talks about the Sphinx and all sorts of...
What does Sphinx have to do with this?
Dude, you just got to read the book. I can't... Here's the thing. I count myself as not a dumb person. Sometimes I'm a dumb person, but usually I can follow what's going on. I really couldn't follow it, not because it's like unintelligible, but because he is too. It was too smart for me. Like, he drew so much on like ancient history and mythology on all of this and wrapped it up into this big philosophical package, and I was just like, what? All right, Jason, lay it on me.
All right, so
Give me your theory.
so things and stuff. Here we go.
Stuff and things. Nice.
We've already touched on it. I don't think what Whitley and I'm
Well,
okay.
let's
So
start
first
at the
off,
beginning.
yeah.
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Did any of this happen?
maybe. So
Okay.
for the sake of the argument, I'm gonna say yes, it
Okay.
occurred. Now, as far as how I receive this kind of information, is that it does not, at least to myself, it doesn't seem like a casual meet and greet.
Right.
This is
Not a get to know you.
yeah, this is not based on just having an intellectual, a philosophical conversation with another species. This, to me, looks like possibly a part of a series of trials, experiments on the human race. Because if, and I'm going out on a limb, say this is real, abductions have been happening previously as well, and will continue to happen, because why would they just happen currently?
Right.
The only reason why I can think of that would say why it's only happening currently is maybe because we finally hit a level of technology in the 80s to where we were essentially
50s,
becoming a...
60s. The abduction phenomenon started in the
yeah,
60s with
60s.
Betty and Barney Hill.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, well, maybe we've finally hit a level of technology to where we are actually causing some intergalactic stir and some eyes to be actually focused on us now.
Well, and we started beaming out television signals in
Right.
Whenever.
We've been trying to
they've
communicate.
been washing over, like, other aliens right now
Are watching I Love Lucy.
are watching Star Trek.
That's
Isn't that the
hilarious.
craziest thing to think about? Because it's true. Like, I don't know how true, but it is true. That signal...
How fast do those waves move? I'm
At the
assuming
speed of light.
of light. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and if that started, when was that? The 60s or 70s? When did
Let's
Star
take a
Trek
look.
originally air? Tangents.
Tangents.
I know, like, aired for like 3 seasons.
1966.
So 66.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only been traveling for like
50 years.
51 years,
Mm-hmm.
light speed.
Well, remember that Where was it? They just found all those planets, though, that were like 40 light years away. All 7 of these planets in TRAPPIST-1. So, TRAPPIST-1, right now, could be watching Star Trek. Like...
If they have a way to receive it.
Right, of course. There's a lot of different like things in here that may not happen.
Right.
But if
theoretically,
it's true, imagine getting like you're just this. Imagine if they're on the same technological scale as we are. They're 50
why
years
haven't
behind.
we gotten any of theirs?
Because they're 50 years behind. They've just figured out television and radio waves and all of that. And
so you're telling me that possibly in our lifetime we might receive alien transmission of their TV,
right? I'm so excited. But just hear it. And you're sitting there and you're watching TV, and suddenly these strange beings come on the television, and you see them interacting and in jumpsuits, and there's one with pointy ears, and the other one just tries to bang everything that moves. And you're
problem with
this
that
is the greatest television show ever. And then it becomes a worldwide phenomena. And then we send people there, and we get there, and they're like, it's Captain Kirk. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It'd be quite incredible.
I got really excited.
But anyway, where was I going with this?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I derailed it.
Yeah, real hard.
I just love Star Trek.
Here we go. So let me try to rewind. Anyway, I totally think it's more experimental than anything. And I would see this as more of how we would also try to calm whatever it is that we are trying to run studies on as well. Like, of course, we're going to tell them, and we're going to get told that no harm will happen to us.
Right. Regardless of the
because
truth.
When people fight, it makes things a whole lot harder to do anything. So same exact reason. Now, do I feel like it's actually a communion between two different races? Not particularly. Because if they did want to get this information out, if they wanted this story, this book, this communion to happen, and if it was that was their great plan, then that's really good propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that is all going to be benevolent and nothing bad will happen to the human race as soon as we hit contact with ETs, like full blown. Now, that being said, that might not occur. Sure, it could be an amazing communication of ideas and jumps in technology. It could be extremely beneficial for us. But at this point in time, we of course have no idea.
Right.
And this seems sneakier than what it appears at first look. And all of this just seems, I mean, again, from the different types of grays to the abductions to everything about it has been used so heavily in our pop culture about UFOs, about aliens in general. It's tough for me to plainly state that, oh yes, of course, that kind of outside influence did not create this idea.
Right.
You know,
it's hard to say that this was an original thing that happened and not just hypnosis that's influenced by TV. Yeah,
exactly. So it's hard to take it at face value when the fact of the matter is that everything is so perfect in that kind of regards. What are you thinking?
Well, for me, I don't deny that something happened at all. And even Whitley Strieber himself he has like 8 or 9 different main theories that he talks about at the end. And only one of them is extraterrestrials. I don't deny that something happened simply because he did undergo that polygraph test that said, you're not lying about this. He did undergo...
Polytests are easy to fake. Easy to pass. Polygraphs are easy to pass if you can control yourself well enough, or if you truly believe in what occurred to you.
Right,
That doesn't make it factual, though.
Right. The machine doesn't have omniscience. It doesn't know what's true and not. But what I'm saying is that something happened in that Whitley Strieber did not just sit down at a desk and start writing all of this, like, out of his mind. It's not a completely fictional book. Now,
that he states, that he believes.
The actual events, the physical reality of them may be up for interpretation, but the fact that Strieber believes that this happened and he experienced this is not. Like that.
Right. And I'm not criticizing for that. I'm just saying that even though he believes it to be true, it still has a possibility to not be.
Right. Totally. I understand. But it's entirely possible that it is all tricks of the mind. It is all shared hallucinations, mass hallucinations, undergoing hypnosis and having suggestions there. And sleep paralysis. It's entirely possible that that's all the case. But for me, having all of the other evidence in the other way, the collaborating reports of Annie and Jacques talking, and Anne talking about that loud bang that happened, Anne's hypnosis session especially, for Anne to be giving a testimony that lines so closely with Whitley's testimony without them having discussed it. For me, that goes against that polygraph test. If they had planned this, when the doctor says, like, he says something along the lines of, he's not a doctor, sorry, when the polygraph tech says, do you swear that the events that you recount taking place on this day are true? And he says yes, and it comes across as true. The actual truth of the matter is up for debate. But if he and Anne had just gotten together and were like, yeah, let's make this happen, let's fake this to become famous, he would have failed at least one of them, because he's asked it like 6 or 7 different times. Okay. So for me, it's not just a pure invention of the mind. It's not just fantasy that they did to get famous or to tell a good story. It is a something that happened. And if we have to look at it, which I do feel like we have to look at it with an air of seriousness, like of opening the mind and entertaining the thought that in 1985 aliens did come to Earth and they did abduct Whitley Strieber. Like, I would say that side of it that I agree with you on is that it's all a test. It's all a clinical experiment. Because the Greys are terrible. They are known for that within UFO folklore.
Exactly. And the physical tests kind of absolutely prove that.
Yeah.
They're not trying to understand us mentally.
Right.
But it seems more physical.
Yes, exactly. And so for me, it is all a trick and a trap. Now, I don't know what their end result is.
Cloning us.
Right. Well, you talk to different UFO theorists, different abductees, because this is one part of the abduction phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And it survives so long because it is so different than other parts, because it is a benevolent thing. It is like a happy thing. Whereas the majority of people, well, not the majority, but other sections of people who have experienced this
feel like chunks of their brain's been taken out and stuff like that.
Well, and they talk about a hybrid breeding program. They talk about carrying alien human hybrids in their bodies and giving birth to them, although they never give birth, they carry them and then they're abducted again, and the child is removed by the aliens, and then they come back. So you have all of these like things that we've been conditioned to say, well, that's just straight up crazy. That's insane.
Right. And because we're kind of automatically trained to do so, you think that we're disregarding this story because of it.
Well, no. I actually think the opposite. I think that because this story is not kooky dukes, because this story, it is insane. Like, it is crazy.
It's pretty out there.
But it's not as out there as an alien human hybrid breeding program and the eventual takeover of Earth by these human aliens who are already here. So in that way, I think that the book may simply be the greatest piece of propaganda ever written. It's something that has opened up. This was on the top of the New York Times bestseller list. And throughout it, Whitley talks about don't be afraid. He talks about we're all going to come together. We're all going to do. What
Kumbaya.
If it's just
good stuff?
What if it's just a trap?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's just a trap?
And a trick, yeah.
And it's them just gearing up and saying, and that way when they do appear, when they do show up for good, we're gonna welcome them instead of fight them.
Right. And I think there's some inconsistencies with UFO sightings and just kind of how I would as a species make myself known. I think it's really weird how a lot of times when we see UFOs, they're in very, very small numbers, if not one or two of them, and they always have, for some reason, lights.
Right.
Why
Because
why
it's
on
all
earth?
part of the plan, man.
Why? So if you wanted to make yourself known, why wouldn't you make yourself known?
Because if they just show up,
Yeah.
if they're there in the sky, we as a civilization, even
We'll
right
shoot them
now,
down.
we'll shoot them down. We'll fight them. Now, I don't know how much our nukes are going to do, but we're going to try. However, if they play the long game, the 3,000-year-long con on us, to the point where, oh, we saw a UFO. Oh, Whitley Strieber had this experience. Oh, there was a crashed saucer. And
Yeah,
then,
but what I'm getting at is we don't have the escalation. We don't have the more and more. Like, why take 3,000 years to show up?
because that's how long it's going to take for us to welcome them instead of fight them. Because human beings are so vengeful and suspicious and all of that it just takes that time. You know, you can't change the entire view of the entire world overnight. You can't pacify an entire race of 7 billion people in 5 years or something. It takes time. And if what they say in the choir is accurate, if it is just clones that are the vehicle for some greater consciousness, this thing has all the time in the world it needs to do whatever it needs to do. And that's, like, I have often said before this, in my happier days, that if a species is able to achieve interstellar travel, it's going to mean that they have put aside their differences, they've come together, they've unified, and that they will come not as, overlords and tyrants, but they'll come to help take us into, a next
As explorers
age.
and
Yeah.
as
They'll help us explore the stars
advisors.
and all of that. That's how I've always thought before this book. And now
You're not sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it's not true. It could be, but
They could also be assessing us as future threats as well.
right, yeah,
Which,
keeping tabs on us.
yeah, I mean that makes clear sense because we actively harm each other.
Oh yeah,
So-
we're the worst. I think
which
that,
is also completely different than what a hive mind would associate life with.
oh yeah,
And I think that's why we also see it as being something so terrifying, is the idea of losing our individuality.
well, and that's
And it's
why
probably exactly the same for them.
that's what Whitley talks about. Why they hide from us, why they're afraid of us, why they have to knock us out and do it all in the dark, is because they are a hive mind. They don't know how to react.
Right.
To
It's not the fact that
someone with free
physically
will.
we're not just aliens, but mentally, emotionally, we're completely alien as well.
Unpredictable. Like I said, everything they do is planned. Not only the big things, like the crashes and the abductions, but every breath that they take is in unison, according to Whitney's theory. Everything they do is planned and executed at the same moment.
But if they wanted people to know, why wouldn't they just crash it in like New York?
Well, because if this is true, if they are part of a hive mind, how are they going to deal with an entire city of 2 million people, or however many people live in New York? Like 5 million, 6 million?
Well,
how are they
obviously-
going to deal with 6 million free-thinking individuals? If their biggest fear of us is our individuality and our ability to make decisions on our own and completely separate from each other and be that unpredictable thing that a human
I guess
is.
my assumption was that all entities within the ship would die on impact.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's possible.
That's my assumption in
Okay.
this argument.
Okay.
But like if Roswell just took place in a higher density of a population area,
Right. But it's
would that
because,
not further possibly their end goals better than having Roswell essentially becoming a conspiracy?
it might, or it might just put the world on high alert, and we're going to shoot at the first thing we see. And if what they desire is integration,
Or it was
either
designed for us to start undermining our government.
that's true too. Yeah,
So that
man.
when the supreme overlords arise, we will welcome
Flock to them. I would flock to them right now. I'm getting news alerts about Donald Trump over here. I'm ready for them. I'm ready to go, man. Pick me up.
I think it's interesting how
We can yell at
they're
each other more.
insect-like.
Yeah, it is.
That was I think probably
think
the
that
most
that-
interesting connection to something that we have on Earth currently.
Right. Well, I think that I don't know if they're insect-like because of the hive mind thought or they're hive
Physical
mind because
motions.
of the insect. Like, I don't know if one follows the other or what.
I mean, worst comes to worst, we just need that fungus that turns ants into zombies and just
Yeah, I've seen that.
put that in missiles.
There we go. And then we're the hive mind, man. We get the little slave bodies to do our will, and we go out and conquer the universe. I like
see,
it.
the problem with that is, I mean, we can genetically engineer the fungus a little bit more, some GMO fungus. Because technically what the fungus does is just cause the ant to climb to the highest peak and then eventually die and spread spores over more ants.
Yeah, there's this amazing...
She's crazy.
There's this amazing book
Talk about an insecticide.
that I haven't read yet because it creeps me out, called This Is Your Brain on Parasites.
Ooh.
And that's what it's about. It's about viruses, bacteria, fungi that assert some sort of control to make themselves spread more. So like taking bigger risks when you're... I can't remember exactly.
I mean, we're all chemicals and hormones.
Yeah. We're all just a brain sitting in a body.
Anyway,
all right. I'm going to call it. We good?
yeah, I think we're solid. I think we
right.
had a good discussion here.
I think there was a lot of
that
yelling,
was a
and
bit of a
good.
wrap up that leads that gives others and our listeners things to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe just to believe a little.
Just believe a little. All right. Well, I'm going to say the things. I'm going to do
You're gonna
this
say the things and stuff. Go for it.
So, thank you for listening. This was our first ever... This was like a really free-form episode. We did have an outline, but it was very short, and so we hope you enjoyed just the riffing back and forth. If you do like us, make sure to subscribe on iTunes. You can leave us a review, which we're going to get into here in a moment because we actually read those reviews on the show. And then you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Not Alone Pod. On Facebook at Not Alone Podcast. We're on Instagram at Not Alone Pod as well. We actually, me and another podcaster, he's actually the host of the Mad Science podcast. His name is Chris Cogswell. We created a paranormal mythology and weird podcast group. So if you search for that or reach out to me, we'll invite you to that. And you can basically just come in and listen to, find other podcasters, other things that are similar to Not Alone or things that are a little different as well. So check that out. We do have one review that we got that we're going to go ahead and read. This review is from Fantasy Baller 9000. What a name.
Dope name, bro.
Dope name, bro. He says, or I suppose they say, I don't know if it could be a...
It could be a lady baller.
Women can be
We never
fantasy
know.
ballers as well. Sam and Jason have amazing rapport, and the episodes breeze by. The show feel is very thoroughly researched. Literally, my only complaint is that there is only 12 episodes, but I'm happy to see that they release very regularly.
We're working on it.
Count
getting
me
there.
as the newest subscriber. So that was from Fantasy Baller 9000. Thank you so much for your support. Another exciting thing is that we actually got two more Patreon sponsors.
What?
Yeah, since the last show. So
People like us, Sam. They
know,
really
right?
like us.
our 9th ever Patreon sponsor is Sydney Morehouse. Yay,
Yay, Sydney!
You gotta clap. Yay, Sydney!
Yay!
And then
I remember that.
our 10th ever Patreon subscriber is actually, he's a fellow named Mike Brown, and he runs the Pleasing Terrors podcast, which we told you about a few weeks ago. So first off, yay, Mike!
Sweet. Thanks, Mike.
Thank Mike. Go and listen to Pleasing Terrors. It's still amazing. It's still fantastic. They just did an episode about the hauntings of the White House, which is super dope. I just want to give another shout out, another sort of recognition is for the podcast. It's called Pints and Puzzles, and it's what I've been listening to pretty much all week. He does a lot of mysteries and disappearances and stuff, not as much paranormal, just like unexplained, but he's done ones on like the Kecksburg incident. You probably don't know what that is, Jason.
Hence my squinting eyes.
That's okay. It's a UFO crash. And I listened to that one just yesterday. It was amazing. He's done it on, do you know this one, the Georgia Guidestones?
Sure.
Cool. He's done it on like the Georgia Guidestones. Basically, a huge range of topics. His production is great. Every episode starts like his little theme song. I might even play it for you here in a moment if I edit it in. His little theme song is his son, who's like just this little dude, and he's
so
like,
creepy.
No, dude, it's amazing. It's not
really
creepy. It's adorable. His son is like, play me a podcast, and then he says like, you're listening to my dad, and then it starts, and it's amazing. It makes me so happy.
I don't know, man. I like Hillbillies a little bit more.
Hillbilly is good. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that reminder. We're gonna get there in a second. But really quick, that's by TJ. It's Pints and Puzzles. So he does the puzzles, which is the mysterious things, and then he does the pints, where he gives reviews of craft beer. So literally something for everybody in this one. I love it.
What's the podcast? Play me a podcast. You're listening to You're listening to my dad.
Hey guys, it's TJ from the Pints and Puzzles podcast. We explore some of the strange, unusual, and often obscure cases throughout history. Oh, and did I mention there's craft beer reviews? Come give us a listen on iTunes or your podcast app of choice.
What the show's best?
So that's Pints and Puzzles. Then the last thing we want to talk about, we're super excited about this. Just yesterday, we did our first ever interview with another podcast. We were interviewed by Jerry from the Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast. And
Which I forgot to ask him where he had that Leonard Skinner covered with the banjo.
It starts out with
It's wonderful.
Is it?
It's Leonard Skinner, bro. It's Sweet Home Alabama, I'm pretty sure. But
I
banjo
thought it was
cover.
AC/DC. I don't know why. I could be completely wrong. No, yeah. Da da na na da na na da na 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 na. Isn't that Back in Black? Yeah, that's Back in Black.
Oh, shoot.
That's AC/DC. So it starts out with an AC/DC banjo cover, which is amazing.
Banjos make me just so happy. That's the problem.
And
maybe it was Back in Black.
It is Back in Black.
I thought it was cheerier than Back in Black.
It's because it was the banjo. Yeah.
That's what did it. It was the banjo.
Yeah.
Darn it.
They cover a lot of similar topics as we do. Rendlesham Forest. They've done a few that we're going to be doing in the future. But then he also makes a committed effort to cover things that no one's ever heard about before. And it's him, it's his wife, Tracy. We've actually given him a shout out before. But we were able to do an interview with him yesterday. Jason got to talk about El Chupacabra. I got to talk about High Brazil. And that's going to be out on Monday the 14th. So if you want to hear us on another podcast, if you like us that much, go just subscribe to Hillbilly Horror Stories and just keep your eyes peeled for that episode on the 14th. And yeah, anything else?
I think we covered it.
We did shout outs. We did reviews.
I feel pretty solid.
Okay.
I feel like we had a good topic to discuss.
Yeah, it was more discussion based.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think an actual communion of thought occurred.
Interesting. Okay. I'm so tired. We're gonna make it. We're like 30 seconds away,
dude. It's noon.
But then we have to do the debrief. I know it's noon, but I'm so tired.
That's okay.
Continue. All right. So you did it last week, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do it this week
because it was great.
It was good. It was really good, actually.
I know.
All right. Let me think here for a second.
What you got, Sam?
What is that?
I'm waiting on you.
That's a terrible.
You can cut it out. I give you permission on that one.
But okay. Remember, whether you find yourself orbiting the Earth at millions of miles per hour, looking out at the stars and wondering what may be looking back, or you find yourself out on an unfamiliar street in an unfamiliar city with no concept of where you came from or where you're going, we are not alone.